Welcome, my friends. It still feels unreal that we are going to get a sequel to Alien Isolation. Since I hope that Amanda will return, today we will take a closer look at her. By analyzing Amanda, we will get a clearer picture of what to expect of her in Alien Isolation 2. We will explore her fate in Alien Isolation, her character, and her experiences in the first game. And then I will read you my own pitch for the beginning of the sequel and how she will get involved. I hope you will make it that far. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get started. Some people say she died at the end of Alien Isolation. I honestly don't know how someone could arrive at that conclusion. I don't know how widespread this opinion is, and I don't want to waste your time arguing against the straw man. So let's get that out of the way as quickly as possible. The obvious first. In Aliens, we are shown that she lived to be an old woman. So if you want to strictly adhere to the canon of the films, the question is already answered here. But I'm not the biggest fan of this line of argument, though it is quite conclusive. So let's look at it another way. Why do people even think she died? Let's look at the actual ending of the game. She is flung into space after returning to the Torrens. Presumably, nobody's left to rescue her. But what is this then? Something happened here. We see a light, and it looks like she's gonna open her eyes, maybe? The light shows that something has come. My mind immediately goes to the start of Aliens, when Ellen Ripley is rescued from her long sleep. So her fate is ambiguous at max. When has an ambivalent character fate ever turned out to be an actual death? Can you give me one example, whether in gaming, movies, TV shows, where we are left unclear about the fate of the main character, only to find out that the character actually died? I seriously cannot think of an example. I bet there are some out there, and you can tell me in the comments, but my argument stands. Why make something like that unclear only to let her die? No. The last second is basically a soft sequel bait. And now, 10 years later, it is finally paying off. Now that we have established her likely survival, let's talk about what we actually know about her. You know what people say about first impressions, so let's take a look. What do we see? We see a hands-on woman who can handle her tools. Certainly reminds us of her mother, who in the beginning of Aliens immediately made herself useful by operating the P5000 powered workloader. Apples and trees, I say. Furthermore, the game tells us that she has not been able to let go of her mother and is still searching for her. The first person we really interact with on Sevastopol is Axel. She seems to trust him despite his initial threats, and sees him as an ally. I believe she was looking for an ally because the situation scares and confuses her. As they walk through the station, they run into a pair of survivors. What does she do? She asks for help.
Not looking for trouble. Who are you?
I'm John. This is Ringo. They're just some assholes. We haven't got time for this. Come on, Jana.
We're trying to get to comms. Can you help us?
We don't
You
need
know,
their
like
help.
a real person would.
We don't need
Oftentimes in games, our main character gets thrown into an impossible situation and they just turn into a killing machine. Or, to be more precise, they turn into the player. The player usually knows more about the situation than the playable character from a meta standpoint. I mean, we at least have a vague idea what must have
What was that
happened
about?
on the
Why
station.
are you so
She
damn
doesn't.
aggressive?
She's bewildered by the state of the station and the behavior of the people. This all tells us that she's an ordinary person, no colonial marines training, but instead of getting hyper aggressive and avoiding people, she's looking for people to connect with. Let's go back to her mother, Ellen Ripley. To this day, she's a fan favorite, basically in the Hall of Fame of action heroes. What is the most obvious difference between her and the cliche 80s action hero? Yeah, well, she's a woman. Why do I think that that makes actually a meaningful difference? Well, look at this. She is afraid, like any normal person would be in her situation. Is it possible that audiences connected with her because she showed her fear? Is it possible that she was able or allowed to show fear because she's a woman in the first place? The normal 80s action hero was supposed to be a killing machine. Now, I realize that her fame as an action hero mostly stems from Aliens, not Alien. But doesn't she actually feel like the same person in the sequel? Sure, she's now changed by her experience, but it is still the same Ellen Ripley underneath. One could even argue she's now more afraid than ever, traumatized by the events in the first movie, but she overcomes it. It sure can feel like men in this situation are not supposed to be afraid, play the strong man, but she's not supposed to be an emotionless action hero. And men were able to connect with her on a personal level because they know they would also be afraid. Hell, the movie made you afraid. And as a side note, I'm not trying to be sexist here, I'm just trying to analyze the media. Men should always be able to express emotions like fear. After all, courage means to take action despite fear and not in the absence of it. Anyway, let's get back to Amanda now. Let's talk about her experience with androids. Our resident robot for Alien Isolation is also in that first scene where we are introduced to Amanda, interestingly enough. Samuels recruits Amanda for the mission to fetch the flight recorder from Sevastopol Station. He states that it was his idea to include her, given her history. Is he telling the truth? By the way, when did you catch on to him being an android? They are kind of ambiguous about it, but the way Taylor says he has probably been up for hours, and him saying, I don't need as much sleep as the rest of you, are clear signs. And, call me crazy, but doesn't he look kind of familiar? And I mean, why not? Both are Weyland-Yutani androids, and we know that they reuse their designs. Tell me if you disagree with me on this one, maybe I'm just a little bit in too deep right now. So we group up with Samuels just before the infamous medbay section of the game. He is with Taylor, who got seriously hurt during the incident at the beginning of the game when the spacewalk goes wrong due to an explosion. He seems to care deeply for the well-being of Taylor.
How is she?
She needs treatment. Medical's nearby, but I didn't want to leave her.
I would imagine that this doesn't stay unnoticed by Amanda.
You're dying.
And similar to Bishop, Samuels turns out to be actually a good guy. He even sacrifices himself for Amanda.
Samuels.
The Apollo transit is open. Once you get into the core, it will talk to you.
You did that for me?
I wanted Amanda Ripley to have closure.
Huh, so he was telling the truth. Amanda Ripley deserves some closure regarding the death of her mother. And this is what I would like to see in the sequel. Some way for her to finally let go. So, I guess, I could argue that Amanda's experience with androids is even better than Ellen's. Ash almost killed her in the first movie, so yeah, she had some trust issues with Bishop at first. So the writers could use this positive experience and make her trust an android more easily than her mother did, and maybe subvert that. I do not really count the working Joes as androids like Ash and Bishop are. They come across more like mindless robots that just glitch out. Ash didn't just glitch out, he followed orders. The working Joes just went kind of insane. By the way, ever wonder why they do this strange warm-up dance sometimes? Well, that's why. If you're still watching and didn't know that, you gotta subscribe now. Let's finally talk about the sequel. What does all that information tell us about her possible role in Alien Isolation 2? We have established that she is driven by the loss of her mother. So it would feel natural if this is still a main motivator for her actions. After all, it's the reason why she was in the game in the first place. Furthermore, we saw how she tried to connect with other people on Sevastopol. I would love to see that continue, and not her being a hardened badass by now. Her experience with Samuels informed her about the nature of androids. So let's piece it all together. Here comes my story pitch. Amanda is in her apartment. It's small, messy, clothes all over the place. It's dark outside, maybe raining, because of course it is. She's going through some cassettes on her terminal at the desk, reading a news article about Weyland-Yutani being praised about a medical breakthrough they recently achieved. She sighs. A knock at the door. Amanda looks through the spy hole and sees a woman standing uncomfortably in the hallway of the apartment building. Who are you? I'm Rachel Young. Is this Amanda Ripley? Please, I need your help. I don't know who else to talk to. Ripley opens the door a little. What's this about? My husband. I tried talking to him, but I couldn't reach him anymore on the long-range wave. He's on a work trip to supervise a new research facility. He works for Weyland-Yutani. Ripley's eyes widen a little. She steps back from the door and lets the woman in. Ripley walks back to her desk in the small living room. Rachel seats herself awkwardly on the couch. Ripley lights a cigarette. Why do you think I can help you with that? Call his boss or the authorities. I tried that, Rachel says with desperation in her voice. I talked to someone from Weyland-Yutani. They told me he's busy with work and will call me soon. I know that's a lie. I know my husband. He hasn't responded in a week, and we always tell each other about our day when one of us is away. The authorities won't even take me seriously. As soon as I mention Weyland-Yutani, it's like a shutter went down. And why do you think I could help? I read about the Sevastopol incident when it happened. I know you were there. My husband once mentioned that it was a shame what happened there, but wouldn't tell me what he meant. I didn't sleep much in this last week, so maybe I'm starting to go crazy, but I just can't shake the feeling that something must have happened to him. So I started digging. I searched for past incidents where Weyland-Yutani tried to hide something and came upon an article about the disappearance of the commercial freighter Nostromo 20 years ago and how mysterious it all seemed. Ripley looked surprised. The article was fairly critical of Weyland-Yutani's response to all of that, and of course the author published a correction just days after. But I looked into the people that disappeared, and the name Ripley came up. I remembered it from Sevastopol incident. I know it's a long shot, but your name came up twice during my search for answers. I'm at the end of my rope. Coming here is the last idea I have. Is there anything you can tell me? Ripley takes the last drag of her cigarette before putting it out. Where is this research facility? So that was my pitch. Imagine it with a film noir private detective vibe. I left a clue about a young woman looking for her husband, about who she might really be. Can you spot it? Now, you can poke holes into Rachel's story. How did she know the name is not a coincidence? How did she find Amanda in the first place? But that's kind of the point. Amanda knows loss and empathizes with Rachel more than she lets on. Maybe she trusts her too quickly. The research station will be located on a distant colony planet, where Amanda will travel under a false name. And there, she will try and infiltrate the facility and unravel some of Weyland-Yutani's secrets. As one commenter pointed out in the last video, would a deacon make sense in that environment? If you made it this far in my video, thank you so much. It means a lot to me to get my thoughts out into the world. I really hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what aspect of Alien Isolation and the sequel I should focus on next. Right now, I'm planning on putting a light on the possible enemies we could see, which xenovariances make sense and which don't. So, until then, and I hope I will see you again.